Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about this question: is it too fast to get married to someone within a year of knowing them? So here's the context of the situation. A friend of mine has been dating this person for 4 months. They've decided to move in together, and he's talking about getting engaged within the next 6 months to this person, and possibly getting married 6 months later. Theoretically, that means he would get engaged 10 months into knowing the person and married a year and 4 months into knowing them. To me, as a friend, I think that they have accelerated very fast, and I want to have a conversation with him about the situation. Do you have any thoughts on this and how to handle a conversation like this? So, the first thing I'll say is I think that the age of the individuals is important. I do think, for example, in my opinion, if you're in your late 20s or 30s and both people are on the same page about being intentional about wanting a serious relationship, I think things can develop a lot quicker than if you started dating in your early 20s, just because there's an understanding and obviously in certain situations at a later age, when you're dating, that, listen, I'm not at an age where I'm playing games anymore. I am focused on finding a life partner. So to me, I think, I wouldn't, obviously, someone who's 22 says this to me versus someone who's 32 says this to me, I'll have different reactions. And that's just my opinion. Just because I think when you're younger, you're more open to going with the flow, and aren't necessarily in that intentional mindset of finding a partner to marry. So when you're younger, 4 to 5 years at 22, being in a relationship, up to 27, could sometimes be equated to 2 years when you're 32, right? Just because you're at a different stage in your life, with different intentionalities and different focus. The second thing I'll say is I think time can be somewhat of a deceiving factor, because what really matters is the amount of time the two of them spent together, right? So two people can be dating for 4 months and be seeing each other for once a week for, let's say, 3 hours at a time. You could also have two people who are dating for 4 months who are seeing each other 3 to 4 times a week for a total of like 12 hours, per week. And we can obviously debate whether, what's the healthy, amount of time to hang out early in a relationship, and we can debate that. That's a separate conversation. But what I'm trying to get to is you can see in these two scenarios, the second relationship is obviously going to have a lot more development, theoretically, because just they're getting almost 4 times as much time with the person. So even though they might have only dated for 4 months compared to the first couple, they're a lot further because they've just spent much more time with each other. And so I think, obviously before you look at just the 4 months aspect, I think it's important, to ask or reflect on how much time they've been hanging out, because to me that's more important than the general number of months. I think the other thing you should reflect on as a friend is what were the factors going on prior to the relationship starting with these two individuals? So, for example, if one of them was in a situation there where they were feeling a lot of pressure from friends and family to get married quickly, that's a concern, because unhealthy pressure and stress leads to bad decision making and forced decision making that's not completely thought through. Or if one of them went through a breakup like a month before from a very serious long-term relationship, well, yes, then there is a concern that this relationship is sort of a rebound, and for whatever factors, maybe emotional support of healing the wound of the breakup, one of the individuals really never took time to get over their previous relationship and compensated by getting into a relationship with someone else. So I think if there's any factors within your friend's life or his partner's life, prior to the relationship, that you think might have put either of them in an unhealthy mental state, then I think that's a conversation where you can ask your friend to evaluate. But if you find that no, they were mostly in a as healthy a mental state as you can be, I don't think there's a lot of concern then from that perspective. And what I do want to say is, and this is something I think that's also can be viewed as controversial, but sometimes you just know it's the right person, right? A lot of people who are maybe not in long-term relationships right now might disagree, but I think if you look at even friendships, like sometimes like you meet someone and you're like, I think like I have a pretty good feeling like we'll be friends for a long time, and like you just have that gut feeling, and obviously that can be wrong and things can change years later based on actions or and certain things that happen, but like I think we can all hopefully point to a friendship where on the first day you were like, I think this is gonna be a friend for a long time, and they have been a friend for a long time, and I think that could be the case with your friend. Like they might have just met the right person and it just feels right, and through the development of the last 4 months it's always continued to feel right, and obviously that's hard for a lot of people to understand. And I mean, I think it's funny the way I received this question. It was not asking about the moving in process, which again isn't a separate conversation, a separate vlog. The question was really just, how do I have a conversation on the engagement aspect and the marriage aspect? But maybe I should do one on moving in later down the line. And I think the final thing I'll say is I think there's a way to have this conversation without it getting too heated, right? I think people struggle with, that was part of the question, was how do I bring up this conversation? How do I approach this? And I think there's a way to bring this up where it doesn't need to get heated, right? I think a lot of people don't bring conversations up with their friends because they're like, it could get very emotionally charged and maybe even end the friendship and things like that. But I think if you approach it in a very mild manner of just saying, hey, like, first off, I like the person you're dating. I'm glad you're happy. I just want you to reflect on if you guys are going too fast. And I don't want you to look back a couple of years from now and say to me, how did you let me move so fast with this person? And I think, to me, that's a very respectful way to go about having the conversation. I don't think that should make anyone mad. And like I said, I give you credit as a friend. As I've said in the past, I do think it's the job of a close friend to speak up and try to hold their friends accountable anytime they see things that they don't view as great decision making. And in this case, I think it's really good that you're doing this, because I think you'll have your own mental clarity, or the ability to feel good about the job you did as a friend, if in a couple years the marriage does end, because you have no reason to feel guilty. You brought it up to your friend, you did your job, and you asked them to reflect on whether they were going too fast, and that's all you can ask them to do. So I hope this helps. Again, I'm in agreement with you. I think the more time you can take, the slower the decision making, obviously, the better, I think, as a friend and outside party you feel about your friend in terms of the acceleration of a relationship. But that being said, like I said, I think there are certain situations where I don't think you need to be concerned about the quick acceleration, and so yeah, hopefully this helps, and feel free to let me know if there are any follow-up comments or questions that you'd like me to speak on going forward. But thanks guys, hope you're doing well.